So I'm remaking the video into a more condensed version because I realized that when I made the first one, it was just a couple of work stories that were really unfair. But I just kind of realized more and more people don't have the attention span for a 20-minute long story time, especially when it's got nothing to do with them or it's not going to entice them to view the world in a certain way. So yeah, bottom line is life isn't fair, and I get that a lot of black pill people comment on that and say, yeah, life's not fair. There's no hope. You're never gonna get a chance. I don't think that that's the case. I think that life's not fair, so you got to make your own chances. That's the way I look at it. Now, in the first release of this video, I was talking about like a work story where a lot of people got pitted against me because the guy who was training me just didn't have the emotional maturity to train someone, and he didn't really feel like it was worth it. And every time I asked him a question, dismissal. Dismissal, dismissal, dismissal. And it got to the point where a lot of it came to antagonization. A lot of people did not, have my back on that job. And even when I went to the manager saying, hey, I want to succeed here, he just didn't care. And then when I didn't succeed, he blamed me for it. So long story short, that's the short version of the story that I shared, really. And it's one of those things that stuck with me, and it made me jaded, but it just opened me up to the reality of the nature of the world that we live in. But it's like you got to accept the reality of the situation so then you could work around it and make things better for yourself. Because I see that a lot nowadays. People do things, quote unquote, by the book, only to realize that the world's not run by people who do things by the book. The real world is basically based on a lot of manipulation and relying on people to go into that dogma. And the more, for a lack of a better term, neurodivergent these people are, to the point where they're willing to catch on to the patterns. But it also bleeds into things like people walking away from their day jobs and not wanting to do it anymore because they're not getting paid enough to make a living. So they're betting it all on themselves, and they're, running out on a prayer and going out on a limb with themselves, just like I did. And that's the thing, is I like to see that when people take chances on themselves and do what they think is in their best interest rather than stay in a job that they absolutely hate because they're not being treated fairly or being paid fairly with the economic turmoil that we're coming across. And I think it's good because a lot more people are waking up to this whole reality that the game is rigged against them, and the only way that you're going to get anywhere is if you stop with the typical 9-to-5 hustle and stop trying to go to college to get a good job, quote unquote. Because once you realize that things like the system we live in aren't fair, it's not necessarily a hopeless situation, but what you do get is you can take the gray pill and say, okay, but the good news is there's something I can do about it to make my standard of living better. Because honestly, it gets to this point where you got to say, okay, this isn't working and there's no way to make it work. So you got to do something different entirely. I mean, be grateful for the experience you had and what you learned during that experience. But if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Because it's not going to work in your favor. And in a situation where you can't win, staying in it is absolute insanity. And I recommend that if you ever are in an unfair situation, or you're not being treated right, or you don't feel like you could actually win, I think it's time to vacate and move on to something else. And I want to make that a shorter video and just get to the point rather than a 20-minute long rant of a sob story, which I might actually make a work horror story video down the line. But thank you very much for understanding the upload. So to the one person who watched the first video, I'm sorry that I took it down. I'm sorry that to my 52 subscribers that I took down on my quote-unquote massive audience. So but that's all I got to say. And when I say life isn't fair, that's not the bad thing. That's not a bad thing to say. I think it's actually a very good thing, and it means that we could work around a lot of stuff and acknowledge the reality and just kind of make it work for us. So thank you guys very much for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.